felt like I didn't belong. I was constantly hiding my heritage, you know, like I never wanted anyone to know that I was Filipino. I would lie to kids and be like, oh yeah, like, you know, I'm actually like part white, you know, or something. Like I would say I'm half.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Sarap Sessions. My name is Ria Renouf. I am the host of this show, and the reason why it's called the Sarap Sessions is not just to pay homage to my Filipino roots, but it's because I think every story is delicious and deserves to be delved and bitten into. Today on the show, we are going to be speaking with Frances Leigh, who is a bit of a wonderkind. She does a little bit of everything, but as you'll hear directly from her, she is a dedicated, tried and true storyteller, and I'm looking forward to talking to her in this episode about why representation matters, what it was like growing up as a Filipino-Canadian, and where that's led her to today, including some really exciting projects that she's working on. So without further ado, let's get into the episode.
Well, first off, thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, of course.
Yeah, I'm very excited. And so my name is Frances Leigh. I work in the film industry as an actor, producer, writer, trying my hand in the directing department as well. I also used to work in journalism too. And yeah, just overall, just like a big fan of storytelling is what I like to tell people.
First of all, you have a fantastic read. And I was always so bummed that we never really crossed paths. But that's okay, because now we're crossing paths here. I was so pleased when you asked me to read a script that you had written. First of all, oh my gosh, congratulations. You wrote it from the perspective of obviously somebody who is Filipina. Now, just remind me, are you full Filipina or are you half?
I'm actually, so I like whenever people ask me this question, I say that yes, I'm full. However, I do have an 8th Chinese in me.
Oh, you're like me.
Yeah.
I'm like 112.
I know, exactly. So if we go into nitty gritty of it,
yes.
I do have some Chinese in me, but yeah, I am full Filipino. My parents are full Filipino. It's on my dad's side, actually.
Hell yeah, girl.
Yeah,
I love it. That's amazing. It was the first time I'd actually read something that reflected me.
I'm hopelessly devoted to storytelling, and that's kind of like why I chased things like journalism. And, you know, I've always known in my heart since I was a little kid that I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to act primarily, and I wanted to write them. And, you know, you and I think, had the same situation where we were growing up in like a very Eurocentric, you know, like society, city, whatnot. For me, it was, I actually grew up in New Westminster.
Oh, no way!
Yeah. When I was growing up, I definitely stuck out like a sore thumb growing up. And, you know, like I always knew I was different, but, you know, it's just such a complex feeling when you're a kid because you can't really, you don't have the words or the thought processes to like kind of explain what you're going through. And what I was going through growing up, being in like a very, you know, Eurocentric city in New West, in a suburb, I was the only one who looked like me. We were the only family in like, you know, I guess in, I don't know, let's say like a 10-block radius, because I went to school pretty close to where I lived, where like I felt like I was the only Asian person, let alone Filipino person.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
What
so
neighborhood did you grow up in, if you don't mind me asking?
I actually grew up in the Sapperton area. So when I was growing up in the 90s, it was like that. And, you know, I had this embarrassment to me growing up. And I had this just like, again, it was so hard to put it into words or feelings as a kid, but I definitely felt like such a big outsider. Yeah. And I felt like I didn't belong. I was constantly hiding my heritage, you know, like I never wanted anyone to know that I was Filipino. I would lie to kids and be like, oh yeah, like, you know, I'm actually like part white, you know, or something. Like I would say I'm half.
You're half Spanish.
Exactly.
I pulled a half Spanish a lot. I would always start off with my dad's side, the side that wasn't Filipino. I don't know if you ever pulled that too.
Which is really interesting that you brought that up, because like, you know, when a lot of people would ask me, you know, what I was or what kind of Asian I was a common question. I would always start off with Chinese, because it was just such a big concentration of Chinese culture here in Vancouver, which is great. But like, I always started off with Chinese. Then I would like say, yeah, I'm also Filipino. And then like, yeah, I have like an uncle who's white, or, you know, like I would like kind of like toss it in there somehow, because like, you know, I'm ashamed of it now. But back then, like it was just so, I felt like I had to hide a lot of myself, and I wasn't seen in a lot of myself. And like I said before, I love telling stories. I grew up in front of the TV, as most kids in the 90s did. And anyway, it was so hard to, as I know, like a lot of people our age, to see representation growing up, especially as a kid when you're like vulnerable, and those are very impressionable times in your life. And I would resonate whenever I would see a random Asian actress or actor on screen. I'd be like, yes, I will be that person. And I even like set this goal in my head where I was like, I'm going to be the first Asian person to win an Oscar. Like, I
love that.
Yeah. I mean, Michelle Yeoh definitely took that away, but you know what?
It's okay. We love a girl.
Yeah.
You watched that moment.
Oh my God.
You watch it live.
I cried. It was just like, it was such a huge moment, and it was such a long time coming. And that movie was just so beautifully done.
I went to go watch Everything Everywhere or All at Once with people who did not understand Asian culture, who do not understand, you know, like the pressures that we often face. You have to be everything, you have to be perfect, and, you know, parents ask for so much. Did you see a lot of yourself reflected in that?
I did, but I mostly saw a lot of my mom. I am very emotionally attached to my mom. She's like my best friend. Yeah, I definitely saw the hardships that she went through, and like my parents in general, because not only did I feel unrepresented growing up, we were like very poor. Like my parents were first generation, and they came here with, you know, just the purpose of finding work and like just finding a better life, which they did. But a lot of the kids that I grew up with, a lot of like the influences that I had around me were very like well off, in a sense. Like they've established like their own relationships, they've established themselves in their jobs, you know, they're like, all my friends' parents like had good careers, and I would be like, again, hiding my parents' like lack of privilege and like lack of like financial stability from everyone. So I would constantly lie about being poor and like being Asian and all that kind of stuff. Everything Everywhere All at Once really resonated with me because I saw my parents reflected in those roles where, you know, they did feel an ounce of shame to themselves, but, you know, they just like still, you know, beyond the struggle, they still tried so hard to make a better life for their kids, to establish themselves in a place where they just didn't feel like they had belonging. So that movie, for sure, I definitely saw my parents, and it definitely resonated with me in that area.
I actually saw a post recently, and I suspect I know the answer to this question, but who is your biggest inspiration?
Well, it's not my mom. No, I'm kidding. It's obviously my mom. We actually just shared a birthday quite recently.
The cutest picture.
Yeah. And I meant every word. I mean, like on that Instagram post, I said that, you know, growing up, it was always about me, what kind of cake I wanted, what kind of party I wanted, you know, who I wanted to invite, all that kind of stuff, what kind of gifts. But now, like that I'm older and I understand the struggles and the sacrifices that my parents have done to, like, for me to have, like, such a better life, I'm like, now it's all about her. And honestly, that's, like, all I want to celebrate is her. So, yes, my mother definitely is one of them. Also, you know, it's the people, the strong female forces that I've actually met in this industry. Two of them I worked with on a project. We were doing a MOW, which is a movie of the week, which is what, you know, us film people call basically Hallmarks and Lifetime, where it literally takes 8 weeks to shoot. And that includes prep and film.
Let's just go back for a sec. Those movies get shot in 8 weeks?
Yeah, it's insane. The official prep process takes about 3 weeks. A lot of like heads of departments, they actually start earlier if they're on board earlier. But yeah, it takes about 3 weeks to prep for the shoot, which takes another 3 weeks. And then we're not even talking about post, which is probably like another, let's say 3 weeks. Maybe 4 weeks most, but it's hovering around like the 2 week, 3 week mark in post. And then, you know, they like the distributors like Hallmark and Lifetime and stuff, like they shoot it out there for you guys to enjoy. It's a very quick process. And on that note, which is, you know, wild to me, is nowadays a lot of films and a lot of series and, you know, like all the content that we watch on like Netflix, Paramount Plus, Apple TV, all that kind of stuff, like their productions are getting shorter. And I don't think they're emulating the same kind of like attempt as Hallmark and Lifetime. I think it's just because the way that people watch things is literally through streaming, and they'll binge a whole season. So basically, like, you know, people will pitch a season. Once it's greenlit, they'll film the season, you know, if they even get that opportunity. And then that whole prep and process, like it used to take like, let's say a year, and now it takes less than.
Do you think it's part of it is the technology? Is it just like pressures on the industry? Like what do you think as an observer, what's going on there?
I mean, I'm like very small fish in this industry. There's a lot of people who have way better answers to this question, but from my observations, I think it's how we absorb information, like how we absorb shows. Remember back in the day, there was a show a day that we would all watch and we'd all be attached to, and we couldn't wait for that next episode, the next new episode to come next week. Now we're just seeing an end to that culture, right? We're seeing an end to that sort of film. Network shows are to the most part like that, like NCIS and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But now with the birth of streaming, you know, like you have your full season. And I think the reason why it's shorter production is because like there's so much content out there, and it's the industry keeping up, just trying to compete with other shows, with other distributors, with other productions. Again, another observation, a lot of people stick with their niche. So there's a lot of productions are maybe trying to like have content for that niche, and that's why everything's like expedited so quickly, right? But again, that's just an observation. I don't think it's real life, but this is just how I've noticed the trend is going ever since I've been in film.
I am assuming that you were impacted by the most recent strikes.
As a Canadian person in film, like acting-wise, it did affect me greatly. And, you know, it's kind of ironic because when these strikes happened, a lot of people were excited. Well, not excited, but like they were finally thinking that, you know, it's the opportunity for the Canadian film market to succeed. You know, like there were a few shows that were greenlit and were made that were like Canadian content shows, which was great. And, you know, a lot of Canadian actors as well were hoping that it was like their time, you know, to start, you know, working like the Hallmarks that are filmed here and the Lifetimes and like the CBC shows, CTV shows, all that kind of stuff. It just wasn't the case for a lot of filmmakers and a lot of actors, unfortunately. There was definitely a standstill in the industry. I would say a lot of people were affected, unfortunately. It was definitely a hard time in film this year. I've worked with a lot of heads of departments. When I was talking to these heads of departments who have been in the industry for decades, I'm talking about 10 plus years, and like this happening. And a lot of them who have worked religiously in this industry, they had to pick up side jobs as well as like, you know, EI. A lot of them are at the age where they're pretty set in their lives. Like they have homes, they have mortgages to pay, you know. Their kids are going to university, college. And a lot of people were very scared and very anxious with what was going on. The thing with the film economy in Canada is that it's definitely correlated to what's happening in the States.
I go back to your script writing and I think about, you know, what you wrote and what I had the privilege to be able to read between like the streaming issue, between like the strikes. Do you think that set you back?
Like a little backstory about the script. So I had this idea of a pilot, and I wrote it like 3 years ago, and it was kind of like conceptualized during the pandemic. And then I was like, you know what? Like one of my favorite pastimes is writing. I actually did try and float manuscripts to a bunch of publishers a while back. And of course I got rejected, as writers do. Again, like going back to the topic of like why I wrote the script, it was essentially just to feel like giving a voice to people who felt kind of like me, and like definitely like for me. And I definitely dedicated it to like even like the first generation Filipinos in Canada that have felt that lack of representation and like lack of self-worth and just feeling excluded in a lot of ways. And essentially, I will give you a brief synopsis. So the pilot is about 3 Filipino girls living in Vancouver, BC, already a very expensive place to live, but also, you know, it's just following each individual, like each of their life stories as, you know, they've hit this roadblock in their mid to late 20s, and them trying to like figure out, you know, like why they feel this way. They finally understand that, you know, they're outsiders in their industries, in their relationships, you know, in their own skin. And like they're trying to like figure out these complexities, and, you know, they go about their lives. They're both all three of them are very individualistic, and it just follows their lives. And it was based on me and my two best friends growing up. Ironically, even though it was a very hard year for filmmakers, I would say it was also the best year for indie filmmakers, which is good. So like basically when there was a standstill in our industry here because of the strikes, a lot of people who had these ideas and the gear, which was the most incredible thing to have, like they were able to actually make progress in the stories that they wrote and the stories they wanted to tell. And a lot of indie projects were being filmed here. Unfortunately, that meant we were getting even more broke.
Yikes.
Yeah. But, you know, sometimes passion exceeds wealth, really. So
Totally.
And I think right now is the time for me to kind of pitch this kind of story out there, because not only is it the time for us to have our voice, you know, like minorities being represented, regardless of like any minority being represented, but it's also a good time because, you know, we are seeing that show like streaming sites like Netflix are opening up to Canadian shows. So they're creating these partnerships, and I think like this type of show is definitely, I would love it to succeed, honestly. Whoever's listening, pick up my show, honestly.
Now it's time for a fun round.
Ooh, I love that.
There's a fun round involved in this. Just rapid fire, random questions.
Oh, dear Lord. Okay.
The first question is coffee or tea?
Ooh, coffee.
How much coffee per day?
Oh my God. It used to be 2, now it's 3. It's 3.
3 like cups or massive jugs?
Actually, okay, so apparently an 8-ounce cup is a normal cup. I don't know who decided that. It's not normal, in my opinion. No.
No one is drinking that tiny.
No, it's insane. Like, I think a standard cup is 18 ounces. Or sorry, 18 ounces, 16 ounces. Then I would just do the 2 cups.
Well, exactly. You're wearing a Spice Girl sweatshirt, which I love. Who's your fave if you had to pick one that you would go to dinner with?
Oh, that's hard. Oh, no. Oh, God, that's so hard. Blah, blah, blah. I would probably have to say Victoria Posh, because of like just her journey from the Spice Girls is like epic.
There's no wrong answer.
There is no wrong answer, but Baby will still always be my favorite. But I'm sorry, Baby. I mean, it has to be Posh Spice. It has to.
So an alien comes to visit Earth, and you have to describe one Filipino dish that you enjoy to them. What is it?
Curry. Side note, I'm a vegetarian. And being a vegetarian in the Filipino culture is almost impossible. My best friend is half Korean, and her and I have this debate because they're also very meat-oriented with their dishes. And we have this debate about, like, what culture, and she's a vegetarian too. Like, which, like, culture is harder to become a vegetarian in? And I still feel like it's Filipino culture, but we're making progress. Like, I had to give up curry, which, you know, it was so sad. But I found out you can, like, do it with eggplant.
Pineapple on pizza.
Ooh, I hate pineapple. I know, I'm the worst Filipino. I know, I hate pineapple. I know, so much judgment. I love mango, but for some reason I can't get over pineapple. It's gotten to, when I was a kid, I used to pray I was allergic to pineapple.
Really?
That's how deep this disdain goes.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's okay, I respect it. I respect somebody who has an opinion and can just say yes or no and is not like, well, world peace for pineapple.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I used to, whenever there was pineapple in like a pizza, I wouldn't eat it because the remnants of the juices were there. Also, like fruit plates were really hard for me growing up because there was always pineapple, or like a fruit salad, there was always pineapple. Yeah. So now I'm better. I appreciate pineapple. I really do. I have nothing against pineapple. I just don't like how it tastes.
A big thank you to Frances for being on the show and hanging out with me on my couch. It was really important to chat with her. I feel like she's a mover and a shaker in the storytelling industry and in the film industry, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where she ends up and what's next for her. So if you want to listen to other episodes, don't be shy. We've got a couple of options for platforms. The The first one, of course, being YouTube if you're watching on YouTube right now, and the second one being through Spotify podcasts, which used to be Anchor FM, but I typically will upload episodes there every Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thanks so much for watching and or listening, and I hope to see you on the next episode of the Sarap Sessions with Ria Renouf. Bye!